In 1901, at Spindletop Hill near Beaumont, the future of Texas changed dramatically as, like a fountain of fortune, thousands of barrels of oil burst from the earth towards the sky. Soon, Detroit would be cranking out Model Ts by the millions, and America was on the move, thanks to the black gold being produced in Texas. Now, more than a century later, the vehicles are different, but nothing else has truly changed. Sure, there may be many other alternative energy sources like wind and solar and electric. But let's be honest, America depends on oil and entrepreneurs, and if the USA is truly going to be independent, it has to know the crude truth.
This episode is brought to you by LFS Chemistry. We are committed to being good stewards of the environment. We are providing the tools so you can be too. NAPE Expo, where deals happen. Air Compressor Solutions. When everything is on the line, Air Compressor Solutions is the dependable choice to keep commercial business powered up. Sandstone Group. Exec Crew. Elevate your network, elevate your knowledge. Texas Star Alliance. Pecos Country Operating. Fueling our future.
Well, thank you as always for tuning in. This is a Crude Truth exclusive. We had a great opportunity to be with the former land commissioner of the great state of Texas, and also somebody that knows a thing or two about the politics that go on, not only in the great state of Texas, but in America. And there has just been so much going on in the last 3 weeks that I had to call this gentleman back and say, hey, can I get a few minutes just to ask you what you think is going on? So today, my guest is once again George P. Bush of the great state of Texas. Sir, how are you?
Great to be with you.
Man, what a roller coaster it has been for the last few weeks. Well, I mean, can you believe everything going on?
I can't. I mean, it's truly a historic moment for the country. We hear that a lot in politics, but this is a situation where it's actually true, where you have an attempted assassination attempt. You have a sitting president step away from the presidential nomination process and choose not to run for re-election. And, I think for a lot of historians, it's rightful to compare this to 1968, where we had high-profile assassinations involving RFK and Martin Luther King Jr. and just topics that really divided our country, and also a sitting president that decided not to run for re-elect. And so these are challenging times, but I'm encouraged by the strength of the American people, by how we've come together, not only as the Republican Party after the RNC, but I think as Americans, I think we all recognize that any attempt at our political leadership's life and their attempts to just represent a differing viewpoint shouldn't be disturbed with violence, and that the battle of ideas need to be just that, just a battle of ideas through our arguments and our civil discourse rather than through ammunition and weaponry. So I'm hopeful that as we head toward the DNC, that they uphold their end of the bargain and have a civil convention. I was in Milwaukee myself between that fateful assassination attempt and the president's nomination, and can tell you it was very peaceful. It was very well organized. I hope the same will occur in Chicago for the DNC.
With so much going on, like we're saying, let's jump back here to that day, almost 2 weeks ago as we were recording, and we want to try to get this out as soon as possible. You've been in the military, you shoot guns, you live in Texas. As far as the perimeter goes, how far was that enough perimeter for the former president to be protected, in your opinion?
Absolutely not. And, there remains a lot of questions that have to be answered by the Secret Service. I think it's going to take an outside investigation. I think at least 300 is a more appropriate perimeter. I don't claim to have had experience with the Secret Service and setting up security perimeters, but just as a shooter myself, I mean, we were truly blessed that an individual got within 150 and managed to miss a vital organ of our former president. And so, I think there needs to be a total reassessment. The excuses we've heard from the administration are unacceptable, that there was an event that Joe Biden had apparently in the vicinity and resources had to go to that the Trump campaign has asked on numerous occasions to have additional security protection, but have not been granted that request, that RFK Jr. himself has been campaigning without any protection. So there's just a lot here that we need to unpack, that we need to reassess. I'm frankly tired of the excuses from the Secret Service. They're better than that, to say that it's local law enforcement, which may be the case, but a lot of the evidence is showing that there was a lack of communication on the ground. And really, it was just a variety of different errors and omissions that occurred on that day of, like people having heat stroke and children getting lost, which consumed the communication channels and the security protocols on the ground. So I honor those Secret Service agents that came to the president's aid and put their body between the shooter and the president, which is really the highest calling any of us can ever have, whether it be as a civilian or a member of the military. But the security protocol leading into the actual event, we're just going to have to question and learn from. Otherwise, we won't be able to protect our leaders moving forward.
You mentioned earlier 1968 and how we kind of eerily are the same. And I want to transition, obviously, to President Biden resigning. But in 1968, for those out there that don't know the history, that's when Lyndon B. Johnson resigned. And what he said was he wanted to focus on getting our troops out of the Vietnam War. That was one of the main reasons, if I'm correct, and I know you're a history buff way more than I am, but that was his reasoning. And then, unfortunately, that was in March of 1968. And then that gave the party so much more time to go find another candidate. And unfortunately, that was Robert F. Kennedy, who was coming up looking like the guy. And unfortunately, he was killed, assassinated during one of his rallies, if I'm correct. And now here we are where we have a president that's resigned, a presidential nominee that has been assassinated. Tim, what are your thoughts on all of this? And how surprised were you when you heard that President Biden was resigning?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why a lot of the comparisons are correct, that it's just a tumultuous time in our politics. It's a very divisive time. We were in the middle of a very contentious war where there's an incredible division of idea and support around. And in our country right now is facing historic inflation where the average worker is not making as much as they once were. We have a serious crisis in confidence in our institutions. Our rhetoric is not unifying and people just can't seem to be able to talk to one another. And our border is insecure. There's just a lot going on geopolitically as well with the war in Ukraine, which we're not physically boots on the ground, but we certainly are supporting. So when the president decided to announce, you're right. I think the key, factor that you've mentioned there that I think the American people should be aware of is the fact that LBJ let the democratic process on his party play out, whereas this president decided not to. He waited to the very end before the DNC and making this decision without the input of everyday Democratic primary voters. Now, look, I'm not a Democrat. They're not going to listen to me anytime soon. But the way the Democratic Party is structured is such that they're going to fall in line behind Kamala and they're going to try to make this DNC a convention of unity rather than allowing voters to weigh in. And this is a party that keeps on talking about democracy and how we are anti-democratic and how Trump is not for democracy, but yet this president has decided to basically wave the magic wand and hand it. Now, there's a lot of discussion as to why he's decided to do it. I think LBJ, was a little bit more forthright in saying that he wanted to focus, like you said, on withdrawing from the Vietnam War, but he also had some health concerns. And, he became pretty transparent about it as that year played out. Whereas President Biden, in his speech just a day ago, didn't really get into that at all. He didn't say, and nor could he say it, because then the argument would be that he has to leave office now, that he's not physically up to the job of being commander in chief, and that he was going to lose to President Trump no matter what. So that's kind of where they are trapped right now, and they're going to try to play the best hand that they possibly have. I don't think they're going to be successful in doing that, but that's why I think there's a lot of similarities, but a little bit of a difference between what we saw in 68 and now what we're seeing in 2024.
Yes, no, there are so many similarities. It's just real interesting how they're falling in line with Kamala. I mean, I don't know how I would feel, and maybe some of those voters were like already technically not voting for Joe, they were voting for Kamala. But I mean, that's 14 million people that voted that their vote doesn't count. But also what I do find interesting is 81 million people, George, voted for President Biden in 2020. I'm not hearing a big uproar from any of his supporters. Oh my gosh, why is he dropping out? And that kind of worries me a little bit, but that's for another show.
Yeah. I mean, and, I think that when it comes back to it, that, Kamala's not going to be proven candidate. I mean, a lot of the primary process is going through the gauntlet, being put through the ringer in state after state, meeting with constituents day after day in all kinds of venues. And she hasn't been tested, frankly, whether it was Attorney General race or US Senate in California. So, and when she ran for president against Joe Biden in 2016, she didn't get, I don't think she dropped out before she even got a vote. So, there's a lot here that's going to play out to the benefit of President Trump and the Republican Party. But, like I said, they're going to play the best hand that they can. But in large part, it was because of Joe Biden's desire to enrich him and his family, and this stubborn kind of viewpoint that he could try to outlast Mother Time. And we all know that we can't.
Well, I will say this, and I know we're running short on time. Let's just say President Trump wins and he asks you to be in his cabinet. Would you say yes?
Well,
can you answer that one?
I don't think that I'm on a short list, but if I were, I'd be honored and definitely would consider it. To be honest with you, I love, being at home a little bit more and being around my boys and building my legal practice. So, and plus, Ray, you and I wouldn't be able to hang out as much. I mean, I'll try to bring you up to DC, and get back to Texas, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, service, I've been blessed to serve in the military, blessed to serve Texas Land Commissioner, and who knows, maybe the door will open in Washington, DC.
Well, I had to mess with you on that one, but no, I want to get you out here is where you need to be, is out here drilling some oil wells and getting back out there. You love it. And yeah, no, you definitely would not have time, especially with what you're doing. I will say this, you have been, as I use this word all the time, blowing and going over there at the law firm. Y'all have just been getting so much more busy, George, and hiring so many great quality people also.
Yeah, we were lucky to bring on my former number two, Mark Havens, who for a lot of people in the oil and gas industry know very well. And we're really pleased to have him strengthen our oil and gas practice. And yeah, I mean, it's been a great leadership role being in the private sector as a managing partner of the law firm here. And there's nothing more quintessentially Texan than entrepreneurship. And so this is a firm that's small, but we're growing leaps and bounds, interviewing some great folks from around the state to join our practice and be problem solvers for our clients. That's the bottom line. We're not focused on trying to bill hours. We're here to address the challenges of our clients. So we love what we're doing and hoping to grow it.
Well, George, keep it up, sir. And again, I think having you right now in the private sector it's helping out the great state of Texas even more, and people don't know it. So I want to just say thank you so much for as you continue to fight for the oil and gas industry and for the everyday Texan and American. So I want to thank you for that, sir. And as always, thank you so much for your time, George.
You got it, Ray. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Again, the Crude Truth would like to thank today's sponsors: LFS Chemistry, NAPE Expo, Air Compressor Solutions, Sandstone Group, Exec Crew, Texas Star Alliance, Pecos Country Operating, and Real News Communication Network.
The easiest way to start your own podcast and TV show? Real News Communications Network. Stand out from your competition. Produce streams of high-quality social media content. Become a thought leader in your industry. With RNCN, you get to be the host. We handle everything else. Tour one of our 3 locations in Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Colony. Call 972-402-6333 or visit launchashow.com to find out more.